Welcome to this week's Admin Chat. I'm Helen Monument. Thank you for joining me. For those who don't know me, my experience in our profession spans 3 decades, from secretary to business support team leader and many titles in between. I'm working for myself now as a certified coach, a mentor, trainer, writer and speaker, and my mission is to help assistants at all levels be the best that they can be. So let's dive right in to foolproof feedback. Some of you may know that I spent 4 years on the executive committee of European Management Assistants. One of the most important things I learned as executive chairman was the importance of communication. When dealing with 25 national groups, usually at a distance, the interactions I had were mostly by email and sometimes by phone. But when you're leading an organization that spans 25 different cultures, you learn what it is to communicate effectively. Since then, I've led many teams of assistants and given workshops and trainings, set up and led mentoring circles, and from all of those interactions with assistants, one common theme always jumps out. When it comes to a situation where we have to give some kind of feedback to someone else, we would rather run barefoot across a room full of Lego. So my objective for this session is for you to go away with some techniques that will give you the confidence to say what you mean and get your message across without fear that the relationship will be damaged. Here's a pop quiz for you. What's the shortest word in the English language that contains the letters A, B, C, D, E, F? Well, of course, it's feedback. Why are we so afraid of feedback? The most common answer is our body's natural negativity bias. Our brains are programmed to react faster to negative influences. This is in our DNA going back to prehistoric times, when survival was the most important thing. When we saw a saber-toothed tiger coming, the fight or flight mode kicked in, increasing the amount of hormones released to the bloodstream, speeding up our reactions and our heart rate and heightening our emotions. The experiences that trigger these reactions are etched into our brain so that we can react to dangerous situations faster. This is why we tend to remember negative experiences far more than positive ones. Now, most people have difficulty receiving feedback well. For others, the only thing worse than receiving feedback is giving it. Many of us implicitly associate feedback with criticism, which can make it uncomfortable, and receiving it disheartening. So why do some people actively seek feedback while others avoid it or immediately turn it away? Feedback helps you to value yourself, to assert yourself, to open up and to be courageous, but most of all to learn. That all sounds great, but why then are so many people scared of getting or giving feedback? And most people are, so there's nothing to be ashamed of. The hardest conversation I ever had was when I had to tell my kids, who were 9 and 11 at the time, that their dad had left us. For children that age, this is the worst news. And even though there were many happy memories in their childhood, this conversation and the way it made them feel has stayed with them. We remember those pivotal conversations, and it's the same with feedback. This may not be the word that you think it is, but it's the golden rule of communication. Whatever your message is, whether it's verbal or email, a WhatsApp, or maybe writing an article or a newsletter, simply ask yourself, what is it that I want my audience to feel? What do I want them to know? And what do I want them to do as a result of hearing my message? This is important to remember too when you have a feedback message to give to someone else. What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to know? And what do I want them to do as a result of my feedback? We all need people who give us feedback. Well, if it's good enough for Bill Gates, it's good enough for me. Giving someone feedback means we're showing that we care about them. We want to help them by being honest. We are on their side. So why do we give feedback? Many reasons. It could be to clarify a situation, to compliment someone, to hold up a mirror, or it could just be part of a regular performance management process. But it should always be to help the other person. You may know the Johari window, and this model explains how giving and receiving feedback can help us to grow. Box number 1 are the things known by you and also seen and acknowledged by other people. Box number 2 are the things that are unknown by you but seen and acknowledged by others. Your blind spot. You may consider yourself to be assertive, but you're known by others as the office big mouth. And box number 3 is the private area. Things that are known by you that you keep to yourself. They're unknown to others. And box number 4, the hidden talents. Things that are unknown to you and also unknown by others. Things that you still have to discover about yourself. By accepting feedback, number 2, your blind spot decreases as you learn what you didn't know about yourself, but what everybody else knew about you. By giving feedback and telling about yourself, your box number 3 gets smaller. Others get to know you better, which increases your box number 1, and with it your authenticity as well as the trust that other people have in you. The result of both actions is that you have discovered a number of talents, area number 4, that now become uncovered talent, again increasing box number 1. The Johari window shows that we need others and their feedback so that we can help ourselves and each other to grow. So how do we do it effectively? Firstly, it should be relevant. So feedback should only be given when you need to clarify the relationship, the subject, or the behavior of the other person. It needs to be constructive. The intention is to help the other person by making them aware of their blind spot. You're giving them valuable information about themselves that they perhaps cannot see. It should also be specific, so don't be vague. Your aim is to focus on a particular behavior that needs attention. So make sure your feedback contains specific examples and that you distinguish between someone's intent, which was probably positive, versus the impact, which may have been unintentionally negative. And it should be timely. You need to strike while the iron is hot. If you're afraid to give feedback, you will probably just put it off. And the longer you leave it, the less effective and helpful it will be. So it must be given as soon as possible after you have observed the behavior or had the issue. Remember, giving feedback to someone should come from within you. Feedback must be honest, from the heart, caring, and certainly never offensive. Feedback is not finger pointing. It's all about letting someone else know the effect that their behavior is having on you. As long as you're talking about yourself, it's impossible to offend someone else, or upset them, or make them cry, or make them angry. So You are expressing your feelings. You're not attacking them or accusing them or criticizing them. It's really all about you. And one way to ensure this is to describe the behavior of the other individual in a descriptive and objective way. You do this by using I statements. You describe the behavior and how it surprises or bothers or inspires or annoys you, using those I statements. For example, you may say, I was so happy about the way you solved that scheduling issue this morning. Or some negative feedback. When I'm interrupted after each sentence, I feel very frustrated. Our relationship would greatly improve if you stopped doing that. There's always the blaming phrase. You always come home late for dinner. You're so inconsiderate. You could try saying, I feel so worried when you're not home in time. I'm afraid something might have happened to you. Or blaming someone. You never call me, so I guess we just won't talk anymore. Instead of saying, I feel hurt when I don't hear from you for so long. I'm afraid you don't care. You see the difference? To give and receive fearless feedback, you need to think about your own communication style and the effect that it has on other people. Think back to the Johari window, to your blind spot. Choose the style that fits best for the situation and the recipient. Remember that the different ways of giving negative feedback can have a completely different impact on different people. A technique that works great with some may be completely wrong for somebody else. That's why it's crucial for you to tailor your feedback to the specific recipient. And if you work closely with them every day, you probably know how they handle certain situations. So use that insight to choose the approach that might be right for them. For example, if you're dealing with someone who is a sensitive perfectionist, a very subtle remark from your side might be more than enough. On the other hand, a self-confident star performer might prefer to hear very direct and honest negative feedback. It's important to first always ask permission before you give anyone feedback and let them know your intention. You could say, I saw your presentation this morning. Can I give you some feedback that I think might help you? The other person then knows that you're going to comment on their behavior or their actions. And if they say yes, then there's a certain expectation on both sides. If they say no, well, that's unfortunate because they are passing up on an opportunity to learn. Why they don't want you to give them feedback is maybe because they don't trust you enough. So it's worth asking why. So step 1 is to identify the situation. You put the feedback into a context and it gives the person a specific setting as a reference. The next thing is to describe the behavior, the specific things that you want to address. And step 3, you explain its impact using the I statements. For example, this morning I was standing by the copier across from your desk. I heard you gossiping to John about my private life. I felt embarrassed and betrayed. I don't want other people to know these details. I'm extremely disappointed. And that's it, those 3 simple steps. Using the I statements, you can give foolproof feedback. You're not accusing or criticizing. You are letting them know how their behavior makes you feel. Of course, it can go wrong. What do you do if the recipient acts defensively or aggressively to your feedback? You may then also decide to respond in the same way, which was never your intention. Then you both become resistant, angry or upset, and it ends up about who is being right, and the opportunity for learning is lost. So to help yourself give foolproof feedback, think about this first. The timing. You need to have enough time for a focused conversation, and not just a passing remark in the corridor or before someone is about to leave the office for the day. At the start of my leadership journey, I had to give some very negative feedback to one of my team, so I thought it would be best to do it on a Friday afternoon so that she could think about it over the weekend. On Monday morning, she came to our arranged meeting looking absolutely terrible, saying that she hadn't slept a wink for 2 nights and had been crying all day for 2 days. You need to be clear about your objective. What's your intention? You must be doing it for the right reasons. People often make the mistake of giving feedback because they're angry at someone else or angry at an initiative that's going on. Sometimes people will give feedback simply to make themselves look better or to feel more powerful or superior. It almost always ends badly if you give feedback just to get something off your chest. The intent should always be to help the other person grow and get better. And if you can express that intention in your tone and delivery, then feedback will be better received. And think about the location. The coffee corner or the corridor are not the right places for that feedback conversation. I would always take my team members into a quiet room so that they would not associate my office with the place that the bad news is told. And if it needs to be online, the best way is with the camera on so that you can see each other's faces and expressions. Don't shy away from giving feedback by writing an email. And the delivery. Adjust your style again to suit the recipient. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. Don't assume that the way you would like to receive feedback is the way that someone else would like to receive it. I made that mistake with my team member, as I mentioned. I had greatly misjudged her ability to separate the message from our relationship, and she spent the weekend blaming me for all her mistakes. I had a lot of fences to mend after that discussion. It would have been better to have that conversation with her first thing in the morning so that we'd have time to talk about the issue and that I could be sure that she fully understood what it was that she needed to change in her behaviour. Negative feedback can be painful. Just like our body feels pain, it's there for a reason. It calls attention to an unhealthy state of things. We may try to avoid people who give us feedback instead of seeing it as a learning opportunity to uncover our blind spots. So how do we receive feedback? Do we like it? And why not? Let's start with something easy. I go to the office. I say, "Good morning, Mary. You are looking fabulous today. I love your dress." And what does Mary say? "This old thing?" Or, "Oh, I got it at Primark for €35. We're not afraid of compliments, but we sometimes just don't know how to accept them. So to the ladies out there, own that compliment, get in that spotlight for just a second. Enjoy the attention, smile and say, "Thank you." That's all you need. Compliments are also feedback and you learn from them. But we are afraid of criticism or negative feedback. Assistants are people pleasers. We want to be loved, not attacked. The chances are that criticism or negative feedback will be unexpected and you won't be prepared. So to avoid being surprised or feeling ambushed, try doing the following so that you remain in control and not let your emotions get the better of you. First, you need to listen, but listen carefully. What's being said? Is it one person's opinion or is it a fact? Listening for the difference will help you to respond. Is it accurate? Now, of course, not everyone has taken my foolproof feedback training, so they don't know how to give constructive feedback in a respectful way. How often have you thought, oh, it's not what she said, it was the way that she said it? Don't let the way the feedback is delivered interfere with the message you're hearing. Ask yourself, what is their intention in telling you this? If you trust them, then you need to pay attention to it. And if they are self-centered or a drama queen or perhaps known for sticking the knife in, you should still be professional and listen to what they're saying, but think carefully about where they're coming from. You may choose to ignore it. The main thing is not to argue or defend. We are programmed to be defensive if we're feeling threatened. We automatically think something is about to go wrong. It's stressful. So when receiving criticism, we're listening for mistakes in what's being said so that we can jump in and prove them wrong. But this won't help you. Even if you can prove that they're wrong, it will just get you into an argument and you won't be open to the message. The secret is to listen actively until the person has finished talking, without thinking about what your reply is going to be. Then you ask your questions for clarification. Is there anything else I need to know? To make sure that the whole story has been told. Ask for examples if they haven't already been given. And use paraphrasing. We'll look at what that means in just a moment. Always say thank you and ask for time. You don't need to react straight away. In fact, it's better if you don't. You may become defensive or angry, then your emotions take over and you're no longer in control. Asking for time to respond will help you manage your emotions and take the sting out of the situation. So you're also letting the person know that you take what they have said seriously. And it gives you time to check with other people if they also have the same perceptions of you. You say, thank you, I appreciate your feedback. I'd like to give what you've said some real thought. Can we talk about this tomorrow morning? Asking for time also helps to diffuse those emotions. Then when you have the conversation, you'll be prepared. You'll have had more time to think and you will be in control. And in the course of that follow-up conversation, it's more likely that the criticism will be put into perspective by you both. Then you have a greater understanding of the negative feedback. You may find that you have to offer an apology. If so, do this sincerely and authentically, just the once, don't go overboard. And finally, you take the action that you need to change your behavior. If you trust the person giving you the feedback, you know they have your best interests at heart and they genuinely want to help you. If they're telling you something you haven't heard before, ask other people you trust to see if they've seen the same behavior. It will also help you going overboard on a reaction that could just be based on one person's viewpoint. So we should all welcome feedback. Whether or not we choose to act upon it is up to us. But it is like someone holding up that mirror for us. It's a great way to get help, so we shouldn't be afraid to ask for feedback, because that is how we learn and improve. The biggest mistake that some people make when they're listening to someone else is that they're just too busy thinking about what they're going to say next, so they're not listening properly. When I was learning to be a coach, paraphrasing was one of the techniques that we used to show the client that we have really listened and heard and understood what they've been telling us. You are giving a reflection on what was said, repeating back to them what you've heard, but in your own words. So use paraphrasing when someone is giving you feedback. This shows two things. It's clear that you've listened carefully, and it gives the other person the chance to hear back what they've said, but in your voice. As I've said, the one rule for giving feedback, the number one rule, is always ask permission. When I'm training assistants about this, I always ask, do you ever give feedback to your boss? Well, most of them don't, sadly. But an assistant's role means that he or she is there to make their executive more effective. And who doesn't want to know about their blind spots? It can be daunting. One leader I worked with positively insisted on getting feedback from me, so we included it at the end of our monthly one-to-one sessions. He would ask, is there anything I should stop doing, anything I should start doing, or what should I continue doing? If you say to your executive, I'd like to offer you regular feedback that may help you, what's the best way I can do that? You might be surprised how many valuable guidelines such a simple question can provide. When you approach your boss this way, you're telling them that you have their best interest at heart. You're letting them know that you're on their side, even when you're giving them negative or constructive feedback. Preparation is the key to giving fearless feedback. You need to think about your intention. Why are you giving this feedback to this person? It should be to help them, to improve a situation or a behavior, or to reveal the blind spot. So collect your evidence and provide examples, giving clear explanations of the situation. If someone in my team came with criticism about another team member, my first question would always be, have you spoken to them about it? And the answer was almost always no. You're the team leader, that's why I've come to you. People often dump the responsibility for giving feedback to a peer in the lap of the manager because they're afraid to do it themselves. I think we should all take accountability for our working relationships. So don't go to their manager or their boss. Talk to them about it first, in the way that I've just said with those 3 steps. You're expressing what their actions are impacting you. There are exceptions to this, of course, in extreme negative behavior or harassment cases. Go to the person concerned and express to them how their behavior or actions will make you feel. It can make a huge difference and increase the trust within your team. You may have heard of the hamburger or the sandwich method of delivering feedback. And this is particularly for team leaders out there who are giving regular performance reviews. This is the most useless and least productive way of giving feedback. You give a compliment, then you give them some critique, and then you give another compliment, like a sandwich. The problem with this is that it just gives the person a false sense of how they're doing. They've just received 2 positives and 1 negative, so they take that to mean they're doing well. People will also typically remember the first thing you told them and the last thing, so they're left remembering the positive comments rather than the critique. The actual point of having the conversation is buried in the middle. Not only is this ineffective, but it gives people a false sense of progress. And even if you're giving them feedback weekly, they're still hearing more positives, outweighing the negatives. And when you get to performance review time at the mid-year or end-year point, they will be shocked and disappointed to find out that their review doesn't match what they thought you'd been telling them. This leads to frustrated team members, and it weakens the level of trust. They feel they were working hard enough and doing enough, and you're giving them compliments, right? But they weren't rewarded for their efforts. It's a vicious circle that can only come to an end if feedback is delivered properly. So here are your takeaways from today's session on how to give fearless feedback. Prepare. It may help you to practice what you're going to say beforehand if you're a bit apprehensive, so that you feel more confident about giving the feedback. And always ask permission. Take your time to think about what you're going to say. Be specific, then there's less chance of misunderstanding. So don't waste words. By focusing on their behavior, it makes it clear you're not attacking them personally, only what they do. Say what you see, what you hear, and what you feel. Describe how their actions make you feel, without any judgments or opinions, so you're not pointing fingers or being accusatory. Speak from your own point of view. Use the I sentences, which means you're describing your own perception. If you start with you will sound judgmental and accusatory. Describe your own feelings and thoughts, explaining the impact of the behavior on you. And own the feedback. You can only give feedback that you yourself have witnessed, not what you have heard others repeat, or things that have occurred in the past. Expressing how the behavior or the actions of the other person affects you has more of an impact on a personal level with the received. And you shouldn't water down the message simply because you're afraid of how the other person will react to it. So stick to your guns. If you don't, the other person will not have the chance to learn from the feedback, and the chances are they will repeat the same behavior. And when this happens, you're in a stronger position to repeat that feedback later, saying, remember the conversation we had last week when I gave you feedback about XYZ? Today I felt very disappointed to see XYZ happening again. Feedback is all about helping each other. Both you and the receiver should benefit, and your intention should be for an open relationship. So be honest, listen well, and whatever you say, always keep your intention in mind. Ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve here, and did I succeed? And here's some homework for you. I would like you to make a conscious effort to ask for feedback 3 times next week from anyone at her work, at home, or from friends. Explain what you want to achieve and watch and feel what that feedback does to you, and decide what you'll do as a result of the feedback they give you. And give someone else feedback 3 times next week, not just positive compliments. Use the methods that we talked about today and watch what it does for the other person. Ask them how it felt to get the feedback. And if you don't want to do that, try some role play with a colleague or a family member even. Practice makes perfect. Finally, try not to take criticism personally. Use it as an opportunity to see your blind spots and to identify areas that you can improve, not only in what you may have done wrong, but also making what you did well even better. I would love to hear your feedback on this session, so please feel free to get in touch. If you're a team leader or aspiring to be one, you may want to hear more about giving feedback as part of the performance management process. So visit the Monumental Assistant website to find out how I can help you or your admin team be the best you can be. I've also created a private LinkedIn group called Monumental Assistants. Membership is by invitation only. It's a safe place where assistants can share knowledge and experience and learn from me and each other to be the best they can be. I'd love to have you join me there. Thank you for spending your time with me today on Admin Chat. I hope to see you again soon.